A couple of weeks ago, we heard about a proposed Super League put together by a group called College Sports Tomorrow. Well, a couple of days ago, more details of that proposed Super League were leaked. I'm here to go over some of those details and give you my opinion on it and tell you why I think that proposed Super League would be great for my school, the West Virginia Mountaineers. So pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and we'll talk about it right after this word from my sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. What is up? Come on in, make yourself comfortable, belly yourself up to the bar, and let me pour you out another shot of top shelf college football content on tap at Kuz's Corner today. We're talking about this college football Super League that's been proposed, and more details of this proposal were leaked by Sportico. Now, we're going to go over a few of the details. I'm not going to get too far in the weeds on it, but I'm going to go over some of the highlights. One of those highlights being how the divisions of this new Super League would be formatted. That's one of the big details I want to focus on, and then some other issues as well. And then at the end, I'm going to give you my opinion on why I think this Super League would actually work for college football, at least for many of the teams in college football, and why I think a lot of content creators and others out there are poo-pooing this before we know enough details and discounting it before we know enough details. Good friend of the show, Greg Flugaur over College Football Speaker Around the Corner, one of my favorite shows on YouTube. I love Greg. He's great at what he does, but I actually disagree with him on some aspects of this, and I'm going to explain why as we go through the video. But first, let's talk about a few of the details of this video, or of this proposal, I should say. I'm going to do a quick screen share here and read you a small portion of this article, and then I'll give you some of my thoughts. All right, it says Sportico recently obtained a confidential pitch deck, which was circulated by the group, the College Sports Tomorrow group, in mid-February. The document contains a number of previously unreported details, including a specific plan for sharing broadcast revenue with players, a 40-game spring football festival, and a preliminary look at how the Super League's 70 permanent members might be arranged in 7 geographically aligned leagues. College Sports Tomorrow, a collection of U.S. sports team owners, executives, and college administrators, has spent months trying to distill the current upheaval in intercollegiate athletics into an entirely new business model. The group includes Devils Sixers owner David Blitzer, NFL executive Brian Rolapp, who, oh, by the way, happens to be second in command at the NFL, Cleveland Browns owner Jimmy Haslam, Syracuse Chancellor Kent Syverud, and Turnkey ZRG Chairman and CEO Lynn Perna. And again, I mentioned, and this has been in previous articles, West Virginia President Igor Dengui is also part of this group. An 11-page deck titled Competitive Equity Proposals and dated February the 15th was produced for CST by Turnkey ZRG, a search firm that works extensively in college athletics. The document is marked attorney-client privileged, although it is unclear why, since Turnkey ZRG is not a law firm. A representative from CST didn't respond to an email seeking comment on the details. First reported by The Athletic earlier this month, CST's initiative assumes that a more concentrated structure for big-time college football would provide greater stability and increased media and sponsorship money than its current fragmented model. Universities would each own a percentage of the league, according to The Athletic, so that's a key piece. The universities would actually have an ownership stake in the league, similar to a lot of professional models out there in different sports, with revenue sharing that favors the biggest brand names like Alabama and Notre Dame. So the bigger brands would still get a bigger piece of the pie, just like they do now. The group envisions a prospective players' union that will collectively bargain on topics like NIL and transfer restrictions, and is prioritizing competitive equity that is also often absent in the current structure. The February plan is written for a college sports league that would launch in 2027, a timeline that has since drawn skepticism. Now I'm going to go over some specifics for you here in just a second as well. But that 2027 timeline, I agree. If something like this were to happen, and I don't see this plan right here as proposed happening, because right now the Big Ten and SEC don't seem to be on board. Heck, I don't even think the Big 12's on board with it. And one of the reasons why is because the current conference structure, as we know it, would be gone. There would be no SEC. There would be no Big Ten. There'd be no Big 12. You would have this one conglomerate of all the teams together, broken up into divisions, largely based on geography. So why would these conferences agree to basically, and these commissioners basically agree to end their jobs? Their job would no longer be needed, basically. And then also, when you look at the SEC and Big Ten, look at the money they're making right now. They're living high on the hog, as they say here in the Appalachian Mountains. They're smelling like a rose. They're in great shape. So why would they agree to something like this that could potentially, I say, because that's the key word here, because we don't really know, potentially cost some of their members money? Now, it may not cost Alabama money. It may not cost Ohio State money. It may not cost Michigan money. But it could cost the schools like Minnesota, Iowa, Indiana, Vanderbilt. Maybe they lose money. I don't know. And again, we haven't seen the numbers, so they may not. But the assumption is that they would, right? And that's why a lot of these schools likely will never go for this. And it's also being said that the networks are not on board with this. But how do we know that? How do we know they're not on board? Maybe they're not on board with it today, but it doesn't mean this can't happen down the road in 2031, 2032, 2036, whatever. Pick a year. At some point, we're going to see a major shift in college athletics and how it's aligned. And maybe even though this exact model may not be replicated, we could see something similar to it. Now, hopefully you can see this on your screen, but right here is the way, according to this leaked information, the way this Super League would be structured. Here are the divisions. You've got the West Division, the Southwest Division, the Plains Division, the Midwest, the Northeast, the Southeast, the South, and then the Underleague Division, which would be the group of 5 schools who would be, there would be a relegation model to determine what teams are in that division. But I'm not going to talk much about that. What I want to focus on is how this is aligned. When you look at this right here, first off, look at my team, West Virginia. They would be in the Northeast Division with Boston College, Maryland, Notre Dame, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Rutgers, Syracuse, Virginia, Virginia Tech. So they'd get a lot of the rivals back. They'd have their rivalry with Pittsburgh back in their own division. They'd be in the division with Virginia Tech. They'd be in a division with Maryland. Their 3 biggest rivals in Penn State, throw them in the mix. Their 4 largest rivals would be in the same division. Now, Greg Flugaur described this as basically the ACC with West Virginia, Penn State thrown in. And that's one way to look at it. You could also look at Notre Dame. You could also look at it as the old part of the old Big East thrown together and then add in Penn State. That's another way you could look at it. And Maryland, obviously. But, I mean, heck, as a West Virginia fan, I love this setup. I get to play Virginia Tech every year in my division. I get to play Pitt every year in my division. I got Notre Dame in my division. Absolutely. Now, Penn State, not sure how on board they'd be with this. And Greg makes a good point. You got a lot of these conferences that would be broken up. Look at the Big Ten, for example. You would have Minnesota and Nebraska and Wisconsin in the Plains Division with Utah, Iowa State, Colorado, and BYU. Iowa would be in that mix as well. So the Big Ten would be split up big time. But you would still have Michigan, Ohio State in the same division. So that you'd have that rivalry. When you look at the SEC, you'd have Alabama in the same division with Auburn and Georgia and LSU, Tennessee. So you'd have those rivalry games. This is, when you look at this, it's obvious they wanted to put rivals in the same division. And they've done that. They have Florida State and Florida in the same division. Why would you want to do that? TV value, which I'm going to get more in a minute. But I love this setup. Now, I know Greg doesn't like it, and I understand why someone like him wouldn't like it, because he wants to play Ohio State and Michigan every year, or at least every other year. And I get that. And with this, you may not get it. So I get it. I get why schools like Vanderbilt or Minnesota or Indiana or Rutgers or some of those other schools may not like the way this is set up. I can totally understand it. But for the betterment of college sports, I think this is better. This way, you're not leaving anybody out. You still get your rivalry games every year. And even if you're not in a division with some of your biggest rivals, you can play them in out of conference some years. Can you not? I personally have no issue with this setup. And I know some of you are going to say, well, of course you don't, Coos. You're in a division with all your rivals. Exactly. But so are a lot of other teams. So I would like somebody to let me know in the comments what is wrong with this division setup. What's wrong with this picture here? What is the problem? And again, if you're a school like Minnesota, I understand why you wouldn't like it necessarily, but I think for the betterment of the sport, this is the way to go. And it's not because I want out of the Big 12. I love the Big 12. I've made that clear many a times. But if West Virginia is going to get left behind and the Big 12 is going to get left behind, and this is a way to combat that and keep our teams from getting left behind, then why not do it? Why not do it? If this makes it more equitable for all the teams that are in the Big 12 now, even if it means splitting us up, then why not do it? That's my argument. It's nothing against the Big 12. It's just what's better for our individual teams. Now, some of the arguments being made against this are the financial piece. Now, Greg argued that there's no way this would financially be as lucrative as what we have now with so many big brands being consolidated in the SEC and Big Ten. Well, Greg, I disagree with you, and here's why. Number one, the rivalry games that I mentioned are in these divisions, and two, one of the proposals or parts of this proposal is to expand the regular season to 14 games. So you add 2 more games onto your schedule. That gives you room to play schools from the other divisions. So you still get to play teams like Texas or Oklahoma or Ohio State if you're Minnesota. You can still play big brands. You may not get to play them every year or every other year. You would likely be doing away with games against FCS opponents in this model. And the only group of 5 teams you'd likely be playing would be the ones from that 8th division, the ones that are the top half of the group of 5, if this model was implemented as proposed. So all the games on your schedule would be against teams from this 80-team Super League. There would be no FCS games. No games against the bottom tier group of 5 teams. How does that not move the needle from a TV perspective? And you have 2 extra games added on for more inventory. Then the playoffs in this proposal would be 16 games. The season would start in August. It would end around Thanksgiving to give you time to play a 16-team playoff. And they've also left room by ending it at Thanksgiving. They've left room to play a 24-team playoff if needed, if they decide to go that route. And as far as the networks go, if the second person in charge at the NFL is part of this group, do you not think Roger Goodell has signed off on it? Or at least interested in having the discussions? If the NFL wants to use college football as its quote-unquote minor leagues system, which it kind of is already, let's face it, maybe they're interested in something like this to make sure their players are ready when they get to the NFL. And they're playing against good competition week in, week out. And all the players can't come from the SEC and the Big Ten. They need players from the Big 12 and the ACC and the Group of 5. They need players from those levels, from those other conferences. This is a way you get them all together, playing against the best of the best, week in, week out. And to me, the talent would be more spread out if you went to a model like this. You wouldn't have all the 5-star players going to Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State and Texas. I think it's great for the sport. You still get your Bedlam. I mean, you still get your Red River Shootout game and all those big rivalry games. So why would those fans of those teams not be on board with this? If you're guaranteed to make at least the same amount of money, which maybe, and why would they be proposing this if they didn't think they would? And I think the NFL, if they're on board with this, they could pressure the networks like ESPN and Fox and others. They could pressure them to get on board with this model or a model similar to it. Now, it might not be a full 80 teams. It might be 60 teams, might be 50, whatever the number is. the NFL could potentially pressure the networks to do this. If the second person in charge there is on this panel, I would think that the NFL wants to make it happen. Wouldn't you? You tell me. Don't you think they want to make it happen? So I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Now, do I think this proposal is going to actually happen? I don't. I don't think it'll happen because I don't think the SEC and Big Ten are ever going to get on board with it. But what I do think is at some point down the road, probably around the next TV negotiation cycle in the early 2030s or late 2020s, something like this is probably going to eventually happen. And kudos to people like Gordon Gee and all the people in this group for trying to do something, not just living with the status quo, because we all know there are large fines or penalties coming down the pipeline because of these court cases that are out there for all of these schools, and they're trying to get out ahead of it. And we don't want to see schools have to drop athletic programs because of these rulings. And if an SEC and Big Ten, if you truly give a crap about the betterment of college sports as a whole, if that's true, if Greg Sankey, if you're not speaking out of both sides of your mouth, if you're being 100% honest about really caring what's best for the entire sport, then you would be willing to sit down and listen to this group about this proposal. If you're not willing to at least listen, then you probably really don't give a damn. And that's how I feel about it. Then all you really care about is the SEC. And that's okay. That's your conference. That's who pays your salary. I get it. But don't come out in public and say you care about the betterment of college sports as a whole when you're not even willing to sit down and have a conversation with these people. That is absolute hogwash. And it makes you a hypocrite, in my opinion. But for you listening, I want to hear what you think. Do you think this proposal, first off, do you think it has any shot at all? And two, do you think it makes sense? Or do you think it's absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous, like my good friend Greg Flugaur? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Want to give a shout out to my VIP members of the day. If you want to become a VIP member, there's a join button below, or you go to my channel's homepage. There's a join button right beside my profile photo. Hit join there. It shows you the 2 levels and the perks that come with it. Hit join again. Bada bing, bada boom, you're a VIP member. $2.99 a month or $4.99 a month, depending on the level you pick, comes right out of your bank account every month. You don't have to worry about it. You get the perks, and it's an easy way to support what I'm doing here at Kuz's Corner, help me keep the lights on. And I am going to be doing a lot more members-only content, hoping to have one of those out very soon. So if you want access to that content, join the channel, become a VIP member. The VIP members of this show are Heath Stokes, Bill G, Phil Masters, and Hellbilly. Thank the 4 of you for being VIP members, and as well, thank you to the rest of my VIP members here at Kuz's Corner. If you want to check out another video about conference realignment, check this one out right here. I appreciate you tuning into this episode, and Q Country Roads.